Alright, today I'm heading over to Virginia City, Twin Bridges. I don't know if I'll be going to Sheridan, Montana, but then I'm heading over to Dillon, Montana to pick up a bronze. And I'm just coming down into Virginia City, Montana. It's hard to believe that just 200 years ago, this was all unknown territory. And I mean, nobody really knew it was out here in the early part of the 1800s. And a lot of people thought there might be dinosaurs out here. There might be great mammoths wandering around. There's just a lot of misinformation about what was in this area just 200 years ago. Now, I know in European and Asian countries, 200 years is like yesterday. But for us, this is that's our history. I mean, that's the beginnings. This town here that I'm coming down into was founded at the beginnings of the Civil War in the 1860s here in Montana. And it was founded by a group of miners or gold prospectors who came out west to find their riches, and they were being chased by a tribe of Indians, I think the Blackfeet, but I'm not certain on that. And they hit up a gulch just at the other end of town called Alder Gulch, and they hit up there on the creek, and one of the guys got out his pan and started panning for gold in the river or the creek, and found nuggets of gold, and that's what basically started this whole town. At one time, you couldn't have gone very far without seeing a tent or somebody living on the mountainside here or the hillside. There were something like 30,000 people in this little valley at one time, all hunting for gold and panning for gold and killing each other, and it was a rip-roaring little town. They almost made this town the capital of Montana. In fact, they built a house that was going to be the governor's mansion, but it ended up being moved up to Helena, Montana, which is a little over 100 miles north of here. Boot Hill is up there on the hill, the top of the hill. That's where they buried people when they died. And it was called Boot Hill because you were usually buried with your boots on. And there's what the governor's house looked like. Wasn't much. And that's the courthouse. It was built in the 1870s. 1876 is when it was built. So it was built on the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. But this town's pretty original. I mean, all these buildings are pretty much the same as they were back in the 1860s, and a lot of them have never been touched as far as restoration, and some of them are leaning a little bit. And the windows, you can tell they're old glass because the glass over time starts to get wavy and stuff like that. And there's a stagecoach you can ride on in this town. All these buildings here are original to that time. There's my friend taking people on tours on his fire engine. Alright, and that's through the town, and that's this is the end of Alder Gulch right here, and all that piled up dirt. Let me get this. All that piled up dirt on the other side of the creek over there with the sagebrush growing on it, those are tailings. They put big dredges in the river here, the Ruby River, and dredged up all that soil out of the bottom of the river looking for gold. And quite literally, there were towns along here that were completely covered by tailings. You can see stacks of them right there, rows of tailings right there. I'll show you up here. There's one of the dredges still sitting here on the side of the road, where you can actually, if you come out here, you can pan for gold at this place up here. Coming into Nevada City, which is just it's not really a city. It was a combination of buildings that were brought here from around this area. Instead of tearing them down, they just moved the buildings here. And it may have been a town at one time. I'm not really certain on that. But a lot of these buildings were brought here from other places. Now, right there is that one of those dredges, those old dredges. And you can pan for gold right there. And here's a train museum in this town. They've filmed a lot of movies back there behind these buildings, because there's a whole little town back there that's pretty much dirt roads and stuff like that, like it would have been in the 1800s. That building was built in 1863, and it was called Robber's Roost. And it was where the gang, the Innocents, led by the county sheriff at the time, Henry Plummer, used to sit here and watch travelers between Bannock and Virginia City to see if they could find or recognize miners traveling on the road that were prime subjects for robbery. Now, the lower part of this building was a saloon and a stage stop. The upper part was a whorehouse. It's got a pretty colorful history. In fact, I think that in the walls, there are still bullet holes in the walls, but it's a fascinating history. Robber's Roost, just a little bit north of Sheridan, Montana. Now there's the Beaver Head. It's a cliff that stands in the valley here, and the Flathead, the Shoshone, a lot of tribes camped around in this area. This was a famous landmark to them, known for thousands of years or hundreds of years as the Beaver Head, because it's in the shape of a beaver's head. In fact, when Sacagawea saw this cliff, she informed Lewis and Clark in 1805, August 10th, 1805. Almost, wow, that's interesting. That's 1805, 12. That's 207 years ago. They passed here just a few days ago. Was the anniversary of it. Anyway, about this time of year when they passed this cliff, she said that her people would be found along this river or to the west over the mountains there. So they eventually found her people, and she found out that her brother was the chief of the tribe, and so Lewis and Clark were able to get horses to cross the mountains to the west of here, which are just monstrous mountains. All right, I just arrived in Dillon, delightful Dillon, Montana. Don Burnell is a gentleman that represents me, and he's cleaning some of the monumental pieces that he's placed in this town by another artist. And he said, just keep driving straight and I can't miss them. And there's one of the bronzes right there. So anyway, all right, that's delightful Dillon, Montana. It's $3.48 a gallon for unleaded. I should have waited. It was about 10 cents more where I got mine. Boy, great town.